Unfiltered. Like you're in another world, like you zoned out.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Unfiltered. I'm your host, Georgii Speakman, and today's guest is Aysha Abdullatif. She is the co-founder of the Northeast Atlanta division of Spherion Staffing and Recruiting, which happens to be the nation's most awarded staffing and recruiting agency. She's also the co-founder, or rather founder, of Ayeworld, a marketing communications firm. And Aysha happens to be an accomplished speaker as well, having spoken at Kennesaw State University, UPS, CNN, Oxford University, and multiple broadcast radio stations, which is very, very impressive, my dear. And she also happens to serve on the board of directors for the Gwinnett Chamber Foundation and Chamber of Commerce. So welcome so much to the show today. How are you?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm doing great now that I'm talking to your lovely face, Georgie. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. My allergies are a little bit crazy today. I feel my nose feels like it's a little bit under the weather. I feel fine, but I think we're just sort of starting to inch into that season where I'm like, oh God, here we go. I feel like I'm still overcoming bloody winter allergies. And now we're on to spring.
Yes,
So
the pollination is upon us now.
it is.
Getting
Yeah.
spring.
And it's so inconsistent in Atlanta. We never know what's next. So lots of questions for you today. Looking forward to diving in. And it's wonderful to see you again after that fashion event that we were at, which was a lot of fun. But how did you get started in the world of staffing and recruiting? Because you've lived now in a number of different cities, from Seattle. You've lived in Canada, haven't you? Yes, you've lived in Houston,
Toronto.
so Texas. Yeah.
Yes.
How have all of the opportunity to relocate and move around informed or inspired and influenced your sort of entrepreneurial journey to date?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I first got into staffing and recruiting really after moving back to Atlanta from New York,
Mhm.
and just identifying some of the gaps in communication that staffing needed in Atlanta. And then fast forward many, many years, and my partner and husband, it was really more so his idea of exploring it based on my background of, again, the Metro Atlanta area has a need for this because of workforce development, really just growing at a really, really fast pace, and candidates needing an advocate for themselves on how to identify the right opportunities. And then all of these organizations in the Metro Atlanta area, again, experiencing incredible growth, but also trying to figure out how do we grow with the right people. And then that's where the opportunity for Spherion, and knowing what an amazing brand it is, and knowing they had no brand presence in Atlanta, the
That's
fit
so-
made it.
That is so surprising to me, because we're such a huge market, like Essential, with the busiest airport in the country, a lot of
Right.
movement, a lot of sales, business development staff coming in and out of the state, and much more. And obviously in recent times, seeing an astronomical growth spike, not only in the world of like data centers. I think Atlanta, I don't know the specific stats, but we're well ahead any of the other cities in the country. And then entertainment, tourism, we've got that growth market as well. And then even in the asset management space, like government contracts as well. I know that my friend's firm out of New York is like focused specifically on Atlanta and the Southeast. So you probably couldn't have started Spherion in a more perfect time. Which areas, sectors, industries, and types of roles are you covering?
Yes, great question. So we touch a little bit of everything. Supply chain, manufacturing, and logistics is a core because we're able to support temporary workers on the facility and warehouse side, as well as support the professional and specialized roles under direct hire, as well as nonprofit, education, healthcare. We also have a finance vertical and a legal vertical. And I can't forget the creative, the marketing, and the IT space, which is really where I started my staffing career.
Okay, amazing. Where are you seeing the biggest spikes in industry? I'm curious in your efforts.
A couple of different areas. So I will say they've been really growing the port in Savannah and trying to enhance those
Mm,
transportation logistics. So the
mm,
manufacturing and supply chain space has been seeing some exciting growth in Georgia. In addition to the healthcare side of it as well, the healthcare world, as we all keep hearing the aging population and the support that we need. And just beyond that, I think any city that has experienced the growth that Atlanta has, with it comes that infrastructure. And
Yes,
the
for sure.
a part of that is healthcare. And again, what's unique with Spherion is we can support the temporary piece of it all, where if it's just to kind of cover for a spike of movement, or again to cover the more specialized roles as well, and get into some of those assessments and testing to qualify the candidates.
Incredible. And as part of the Spherion ecosystem, was it challenging, or what really was the process to become the Northeast co-founder of this division? And then how much sort of support do you have, or how integrated are you into the national or international sort of ecosystem of Spherion?
Yeah. Well, I think it comes down to the individual before you enter into any business agreement. The responsibility is on the individual to do your due diligence, right?
Mhm.
You have to research the market. You have to research your competitors. I mean, I call it competitive analysis, but it really is just getting online and seeing what is the messaging? What are these other brands
Mhm.
saying? And so that was what me and my partner did, is we looked at all of the different staffing brands, all of the different business
Yes.
opportunities that lie within there, and within Spherion. And like I mentioned earlier, noticing the opportunity in Metro Atlanta, knowing that Spherion is well established in many other key Southeast markets. That was when we go into what we call a discovery day.
Mhm.
And a lot of entrepreneurs, if they're, if you want to get into a restaurant franchise or a hotelier, you're going to do this. You're going to go and have a discovery day, a
Mhm.
meeting of the minds, where the Spherion corporate team wants to know why us, and vice versa, right? So it has to be a match, just in the same way you see it in staffing and recruiting, the same way you see it in your personal life, maybe. But before you go into any contractual business agreement, you want to make sure that this is the right fit. And within that is a lot of research, and that responsibility, lies on that person that wants to go in and make the investment.
I'm assuming you guys have access to the broader ecosystem, like databases and just intel and things internally as part of the bigger Spherion ecosystem.
Absolutely. That's something that I really appreciate and love about it. Our
Yeah.
parent company is Randstad, a
Yes.
global staffing powerhouse. Spherion and Randstad's headquarters are here in Atlanta, which is amazing.
Mhm.
And we get to use all of their compliance, all of their technology, tap into their legal. So from the back end, we've got great support on processes. And on the front end, there's this amazing community of other Spherion owners across the US.
Mhm.
And I think that's why the brand reputation is the strongest for Spherion, is because every local market is individually owned, and
Right.
invest in the community, and figuring out how can we better the communities that we live in? How can we serve, where we live better?
Absolutely. Out of all the national offices, interstate and what have you, do you feel that there's a general recognition that Atlanta and just the Southeast in general is a massive growth market?
Yes, yes, I absolutely do feel that recognition of knowing that it's such a growth market, and having that common and mutual understanding within our support of saying, okay, we want to make sure that every step of the way we're doing this with the highest level of service, the highest level of integrity.
Mhm.
We don't want to take a misstep, because all eyes are on Atlanta right now with everything that's happening.
Wow. Absolutely. That's incredible. And with all of your changes in travel and incredible opportunity to live in alternative cities, originally being from Atlanta, and I can relate because obviously I've lived in Adelaide, Melbourne, Sydney, the Gold
Yeah,
Coast in Australia for a couple of years with study, and then a long time in LA, and a lot of time in New York also, and then now we're in Atlanta. We've had similar journeys in terms of like just moving around, interstate and
yeah,
what have you. What changes have you seen to the industry? Because if you recall, and I have to share this, I come
yes,
from a recruitment, executive search, management consulting background. So I was exposed to the industry personally from the age of, oh God, well, since I was a child. And then I started working in an office on my school holidays. Like my father was like,
yes,
no, you can work 9 till 6. whilst all the kids were, playing outside in the sunshine, I was, manning desks and manning offices, answering phones and, doing some recruiting, assisting and all that kind of stuff as a teenager. And, obviously the industry was so different back then. I mean, sure, there's the classic important things like networking and building relationships and, doing all the things. But how do you have seen that it has evolved, changed, pivoted, and all the rest, particularly with the likes of, AI lingering around on our shoulders?
Yes. So I will say the foundation remains the same. What you just mentioned, the relationship piece of it, the people aspect, that's never going to change when your product is people, right? So
Right.
that stays, I feel like, as a core foundation. But then with AI and with all the technology augmentation that's come about, to really lean into that piece of it, to lean into the automation and to lean
Yes.
into AI and to finding different ways to better assess, to better interview. And
Hmm.
the behavioral interviewing piece of it is you
Right.
can take all this data and AI can help you put it into digestible chunks for our client partners,
Mm.
right? So I feel like a lot of staffing organizations, or not even just staffing, I would say people that are doing the hiring in general, they're a little skeptical of AI, right? Because
Yes.
they want to understand, oh well, is this
Everybody
going
is.
to, yeah, everyone is skeptical of it.
Everyone's like, what is going to happen to all of us? Yeah.
Exactly. But we lean into it. We lean into it because it can help transcribe our interviews. It can help take the
Hmm.
notes and format it into a beautiful
Hmm.
profile analysis of our
Hmm.
candidates.
Hmm.
It can help identify the gaps and what they're missing with the candidates that we're using. So
Hmm.
we're actually building within our Spherion Atlanta office some really cool proprietary tools
Oh,
to be continued.
fantastic. Yeah.
To be continued there, Georgie,
Yes.
as far as the ways that we have found that AI can just help enhance the experience. And we're seeing an incredible return on leaning into that, being that I can confidently say, I know that our Sphere in Atlanta team is delivering the most comprehensive profile assessments of our candidates because we're offering up all of this information, not just
Mm.
data, but again, the behavioral interviewing analysis,
Mhm.
so that with these hiring managers, they're not just looking at a resume. They're able to see all of the different layers of what we've done, and they can go deeper when they are having those interview conversations. They don't
Right.
have to add 5 more steps onto their interview process,
Right.
but
Yeah.
they get all of this information up front so they can say, oh, okay, this is interesting. I get to see all of their, responses and things here. So I already have a great direction on where to go.
I love that. That's brilliant. And you're sort of, it sounds like we're on a similar side on the AI journey and trajectory because we say, and we do, focus on solving very specific business problems, which typically translate to cutting costs, not personnel, at least
Right.
certainly not yet.
Right.
Um, you know, uh, Increasing efficiencies astronomically and just solving some of these heavy administrative driven duties that are just so time consuming and quite frankly don't need to be there. So it just means that the human output can be like 10 times more efficient and effective, and all the rest. And there's obviously the explosion of AI, horizontal and vertical AI agents. You've got the
Yes.
customer service chatbots. You've got various, voice to text type features and a whole
I
range
was
of
just
other
thinking
things.
all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that are just, really helping solve some of these business problems that, quite frankly, so many human beings have hated doing for a really long time. So,
Absolutely. Work
I'm not.
smarter, not harder.
Yes, exactly. That too. We get to play harder too, hopefully. But I imagine it's quite competitive out there with a lot of the major players in market that are looking to build out sort of their own proprietary tech type solutions. There are so many generalist type solutions for a lot of industries, whether it's accounting, legal, whatever. But I think you guys sounds like you're barking up the right tree by building something proprietary because not only will that help control more of the security measures, you can own and control your own black box so that people's private information data is protected, and ideally build in more of a significantly higher, more like higher customized way. So increased customization and all the rest, because I think a lot of these generalized solutions probably won't be in a position to evolve as quickly as your business will. So
Absolutely.
even though it might be a more costly investment, sort of seemingly upfront, I imagine it's going to serve you guys significantly in the longer run.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I know who we need to bring in as our
Oh,
AI consultant when we're in the testing phase. So it sounds like we're right in sync with what needs to be done to support workforce development overall.
we can definitely, yeah, have a conversation
Yes.
outside of this for sure. So what with the new DEI cuts and all the rest, how has that impacted the way a lot of these companies, enterprise level organizations, SMBs, you name it, everybody in between, how has it influenced their ability to recruit and in what capacity?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. And I
It might
will
be too
say this.
soon. It might be too soon to even ask
No,
that question.
I wouldn't say it's too soon. I will say that in the past quarter, because we're just coming
Hmm.
up on the end of
Hmm.
Q1 now, right? I
Hmm.
will say this is the first time that I saw from both sides that how the changes from our current administration have trickled down immediately to organizations we
Right.
serve. So I've seen it from two different lenses. I've seen organizations come and request, we want to make sure you have equal opportunity and DEI language in your service terms agreements, which
Mm.
surprised me because in all of our service terms agreements to partner with us for hiring, we include all of the language around equal opportunity, employment, the Fair Trade Act, and everything like that. So that was the first time I started to see organizations that were pushing back
Mhm.
on doing away with
Mhm.
DNI.
Mhm.
That was the first time I've had that requested to
Mhm.
be put in. And then on the flip side, I've also seen requests to be able to understand what our I-9 and E-Verify looks like for being able to verify U.S. employment.
Mhm.
So those were two things from both sides of the coin, so to speak, that were new to
Right.
me that I immediately noticed that shift. And basically, and again, just in the era of confidentiality, it was different organizations concerned about different things.
Yes.
And I just think what everyone is realizing and or wanting to be careful of is if there is any eyeballs, if there's any audits or knock on wood, anything like that, to
Right.
make sure that they're doing right by the mission of their organization.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I imagine, just there's a lot of fear still as to what is going to continue to unfold, politically, economically, and how that obviously impacts future employment and job security. What other trends are you sort of seeing in the industry now that people could be more aware of and astute to, and or sort of take more charge or control over to prevent a sort of more of a negative outcome for them individually?
Well, I will say I've noticed the trend of the pendulum swinging back to the employers having a little bit more autonomy to request coming back into the office. So
Mhm.
that was something that when it's a candidate driven market, candidates like working from home. They like
Mhm.
flexibility. They like a good hybrid option. Who doesn't?
Yes.
And now just starting to notice the trends of we want to get everyone back into the office. Noticing that uh, every role that's been coming through to us is 5 days a week in office. And for us,
Lines
we
up.
focus on local, right? Like people care about their commute. They care about how far they have to drive every day.
Yes.
So that's been a unique one because again, you want to navigate it to honor our client partners, but at the same time, we have to at least we're able to be upfront and transparent with both sides, right? We can let the candidates know, hey, this is a return to office era right now,
Yeah.
and organizations let them know if we're hearing pushback. We get to be that neutral third party to help educate both sides of it.
Mhm.
And so that's always been a good conversation to have to just say, let's just be upfront with the expectations.
And are you getting a positive or mostly negative response from candidates on having to go back into the office full time?
I think it's a mixed bag because there are definitely personas that say, hey, I want to be back in the office or at least back in the office for a few days, right? To have that people interaction. But again, there is a huge group that's still resisting and saying, I love working from home. I love the flexibility it allows for parents, for, for people that just have their own lives layered within it, that look at commuting as an additional layer. But again, I can see it from both ways, because again, our own team, we're in office, right? We have candidates coming into our office. We have to be there. There are certain things and certain roles like healthcare, telehealth is amazing, but at the same time, nothing can take away from a nurse practitioner taking your blood pressure for you instead of your blood pressure ring doing it.
Right.
So there's that.
Oh, 100%. And are you finding that the candidates are also expressing fear around AI and that impacting their future ability to become employed? And if so, how do you proactively address and / appease them amidst those types of dialogues?
I haven't seen a lot of fear on the candidate side about AI, to be honest.
That's good.
Yeah, so it's
That's
been
good.
good. It's interesting because I can definitely identify, and my recruiters can too. We can tell when AI has written the email, the cover letter
Oh my
for the
goodness. Yeah.
candidates,
Right. Oh, that's
because
hilarious.
there isn't a layer of personality or warmth sometimes to AI written emails, which that's just the way of the tone. So I've seen that, but I haven't seen candidates express fear. I have noticed personally, though, roles that I used to staff for a decade ago don't exist anymore, and that's just
Yes.
the translators, the transcribers, just some of the different things that AI can take care of for large organizations. Just have noticed that some of these roles have evaporated, but it's been so quiet and subtle that you almost don't even realize it's happening in the moment.
Right. That's incredible. And I mean, running Spherion in this market and, working amidst these sort of growing sectors and industries, how do you find time to manage your efforts and input with Ayeworld? And tell us about that business. When did you find it? Found it, and then, and what does it entail, and how does it complement the work you do otherwise?
I appreciate that ask. I started Ayeworld 7 years ago, actually, when I had just moved from Seattle to Toronto, and I was just trying to kind of best understand how does staffing and marketing and my entire background blend together. And I say this to any marketing agency. Marketing agencies are augmented staffing, because an organization is hiring a marketing agency because they don't have those specializations in house, right? They
Right.
don't have the video editor. They don't have the content writers. They don't have the strategists that they need. So over the past 7 years, Ayeworld has evolved, and now I can confidently say the marketing, the communications projects that we do absolutely support Spherion, because when with Spherion, people are looking for either a temporary contractor or a long-term direct hire, and that is looking at a person with how many hours of work they're doing, right?
Right.
And with Ayeworld, specifically in marketing, we're looking at it from an outcome basis. The company wants the deliverable. They don't care how many hours it takes. They don't care how many people were
Yes,
involved
they just want,
in the process. They want this outcome. And so that's been the really, I guess, cool piece of it all, for lack of a better word, is to see how I'm able to support Ayeworld and support Spherion. Of course, with Spherion, us being 2 years now in Atlanta, the majority of my efforts are there. And if I get a request for a proposal with Ayeworld, I absolutely honor it. If I get a referral, if it makes sense, my hope is, of course, to be able to figure out my time and efforts in the future. But as you know, when you're dealing with a newer market, a newer office, Spherion right now is taking probably 80 to 90% of my efforts.
that's amazing. And I think, if it's marketing and comms and all that, sometimes that just has to be in more of an organic flow, whereas I feel like you can probably control more of the process with Spherion.
Sure.
That's curious to find out how you actually secure clients. Is it a lot of hard, old school, cold outreach, or are you able to do contract driven work through the firm's ecosystem? Or are you guys 100% responsible for securing your own clients?
It's a huge mix. The great piece of Spherion being in a part of a broader ecosystem under Randstad and under this
Hmm.
Spherion network
Hmm.
is we can work with any organization that has a Spherion contract anywhere in the US. And we get referrals from our sister offices. It's happened quite a few times, even just in the Southeast, South Carolina, saying, okay, we have a client in Atlanta expanding, or Orlando, or wherever that may look like. It's been really interesting. We can also operate under Randstad agreements for the most part too. Not all of them, not to quote me on it on record, but the majority of Randstad agreements, there is open transparency internally within our ecosystem to be able to understand what that would look like to support a large bottler or a large retailer, or what are those details look like.
Hmm.
So that's a huge piece of it. But we also have the tried and true business development folks that do the cold calling, that
Right.
do the email outreach, that are a part of all of the local community events, whether it's the Goodwill Job Fair that happens to the DeKalb
Mm.
Chamber of Commerce, or being a part of the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce board, and just having that access and visibility to a lot of C-suite executives
Hmm.
that are saying, hey, hiring is really tough. Do you think you could help us out? And of course, I'm honored. Yes, here,
Yes.
let me get my team and jump in. So it's been a mix. I love
Mhm.
referrals, but what business owner doesn't love a good referral or a warm introduction? At the same time, though, I think there's a necessity to always be boots on the ground out there, putting your voice and your
Mhm.
brand.
Mhm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's always going to be multiple sort of portals and strategies and just funnels to acquire new customers and have, referrals and leads and all the rest. And it's a forever
Sure.
changing landscape. So,
Oh,
um,
sure. In
yeah,
marketing, we call it a science. We're always testing,
yes.
and there's no, recipe that's like, oh, social media is going to give us all of our leads. That's it. We just have to sit on Instagram all day.
Yeah, it's a completely
Yeah.
discombobulated sort of marketplace. There's almost like no right way of how it works. I mean, I remember when LinkedIn first came to market and it was just the most interactive, unbelievably effective tool. There were a lot of people in market that were pressured to join it at all levels, but there wasn't the spam that there is today,
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. And so the reach, I mean, sure, there's obviously millions and millions and millions more people in LinkedIn globally today than there ever was. But at the same time, people were way more willing to interact, I feel, on LinkedIn than perhaps they were today, simply because of all the different security driven filters that people can leverage. So, have you found
Sure.
LinkedIn to be as an effective tool these days, or in the spirit of the whole ecosystem being rather discombobulated, what other tools and tactics would you say are, good for either party, an employer or an, future employee?
Sure. I do think LinkedIn is still a practical tool in the workforce world for two
Mhm.
sides of it, right?
Mhm.
For candidates, I've had candidates as of recently tell me they weren't on LinkedIn. They thought LinkedIn was fake jobs. And I
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. Let
Yeah, you're
me
like, "Oh, no,
tell
no,
you,
no, no, it's still yeah, it's still up and
it
happening."
costs more to post a job on LinkedIn than it does on any other
Yeah.
jobs platform. And I think that what I like about LinkedIn is companies and organizations can have their brand page, right? They can put out their messaging, they can show how many people are in their organization. You can't really fake those types of numbers, right? When you go
Mhm.
to someone's LinkedIn page, if you have 2 employees or if you have 200 employees, it shows, right?
Yeah.
And I do think being able to organically connect with people that you have a lot of mutual
Mhm.
connections with,
Mhm.
that's an easy way to start a conversation. When you see someone that has 47 mutual connections and you're like, oh wow, we may have met, and or we should meet, or this could be a great opportunity to start a conversation because I see all these commonalities, right? You might meet someone that lived in the same part of Australia as you, and you may not have uncovered that in your first or second conversation, but you can easily see it on LinkedIn, right?
Right.
So I appreciate that, but I don't think LinkedIn is the end all be all by any means, because there are still a lot of other great platforms. I'm probably going to be giving a shout out now to another sales tool, which is Zoom Info.
Yes.
Zoom
Yeah.
Info, it's great. It's a licensed software. And if you want to target a specific
Mhm.
industry and a specific organization, it will at least give you contact information, right? If you wanted to put an email campaign, or if you just wanted to pick up the phone and call into an office and say, hey, I'm looking to speak to whoever's in charge of hiring. And
Yeah.
that's what I tell my salespeople to do is if you have a target or a prospect that you want to get in touch with, we're fortunate to have a license like Zoom Info, because 15 years ago, I was over there just trying to figure out what's the email combo to not get
Right?
a bounce back. Are we
Oh,
doing first dot last name? Is it the
yes.
first
Oh,
initial? Like, what
yeah.
is the combination that's going to get my email to get to the right person?
And, then it's the market differences, right? So obviously coming from Australia, we're only a country of, I guess, around 24 to maybe 25 million people versus the 330 million that reside in the United States. And I remember when I first immigrated to America nearly 12 years ago now. I can't believe it.
Wow.
Oh God, I feel like I only just arrived like 2 weeks ago, but yeah, 12 years have passed. And I remember just thinking, how the hell do I get through to these people? I remember just being on my business visa and just going down these rabbit warren portals to absolutely nowhere. It was like being John Malkovich, but I wasn't coming out the other side anywhere. Whereas in Australia, it was just like the literal email address would be there. You could literally just email the recruiter or the point of contact at the said company, and they would respond within 24 hours. And it was very seamless and easy. But I just feel like there are so many, and I don't know if they're corporation formalities where for HR, they're just simply filtering out, the whoever's. But what, as a result, are your tips, tricks, advice outside of, the LinkedIn's and I guess Zoom info for candidates to best prepare mentally for, say, the outcomes of job applications in terms of statistics, i.e., what are the best strategies? Do they apply for 100 different jobs in a day, hoping to get responses from 5 or 10% of those applications, or whatever it might be? But I feel that from firsthand experience, I kind of struggled and just thinking, God, there's no one there. So how are they filtering in a country as large as America? Where does my CV go, even though it says it's a part of a system? Is it really? All those things.
It's in a black hole somewhere.
Black hole, yeah, black hole somewhere.
Behind Jupiter. No, I'm joking. Well,
Like
first off,
Black Mirror episode.
yeah, to answer that first piece of it. So a lot of large organizations use applicant tracking systems, an ATS.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate part of an ATS is it's only looking for very few keywords. And if your resume doesn't have those keywords, it is seemingly going into an abyss, right? And these HR at, I don't know, Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever the organization is, they're getting hundreds, if not thousands, of emails on a daily and weekly basis.
The volume.
Yes. So using a firm like Spherion, we get to advocate for our candidates in a very direct and organic way to be able to know who the hiring manager is, who within HR is supporting which team, which functionality, which role. So that helps a lot too. And then I will say at the end of the day, my favorite marketing tip to give people is to have a really great subject line in your email, right? You have to have a subject line that is going to capture their eyeballs, because if it is just no subject line, it looks like spam. Or
Absolutely.
if it's, you can put everything that you need to put in that subject line of who you're trying to reach, what you're looking for, what your ask is, and make it as compelling as possible, because I genuinely feel it's the subject line that drives an email open rate. And then once your email is opened, from there, you have a much higher percentage of at least getting some level of a response. But again, unfortunately, large organizations, and I see it all the time, they'll just do a form, a blanket rejection email that's, was crafted to just go after whoever. It wasn't individual to you, and you have no reason behind it. So when we work with our candidates and our clients are passing on their candidacy, they're declining to continue interviewing them.
Right.
We try our best to get the feedback, because we know the feedback is what matters to the candidates.
Yes.
And it's what matters to our recruiters too, because we want to know what was missing. What was the industry experience? They didn't have, steel experience for the manufacturing world, or they didn't have medical assistance experience for an executive administrator role at a nonprofit. Like these are actual examples that I've heard in real time, recently. But to at least be able to give something tangible back to job seekers is the most important thing. And that's all I could leave it with.
I would 100% concur, just because, there's nothing worse than applying for job after job after job and feeling like just a piece of paper. And then I've heard the stat that it's now the average job time to secure full-time employment is up to 6 months. Would you concur with that?
Well, I would not agree with that statistic, at least with the organizations we're supporting. I will say even 6 weeks feels like a long time.
Right.
And 6 weeks would, to me, be on the longer side. I will say I've seen some organizations take up to 10 weeks, but I feel like 6 weeks is very long. If you have qualified candidates, in this within 3 to 4 weeks, you should have found and identified the right person for this role.
For sure.
And that is something I push back when I talk about brand reputation and wanting to be with an organization that aligns with your values.
Yes.
I tell this to the organizations all the time. Like, we're protecting your brand reputation, so you need to respond to let us know how quickly we can get these interviews scheduled. Yes. Because on the flip side, it's the candidate's right as well to say, I haven't heard anything from 3 weeks. I need to do what's best for myself. And I've seen that with candidates too, to say, I have a pending job offer at X organization. I really want to work at Y organization, Aysha. I know you told me they're reviewing my resume and they're going to get next steps and feedback, but I can't let
another opportunity go. 100%.
I have to pay my bills. And I say I fully support it. And I take that information and I do share it with Y company. I do let them know you missed out on this candidate because you took too damn long, because your process is so archaic. We're not using postal mail to communicate. So,
No, for sure.
Yeah. That gets on my nerves, and maybe it's our time living in New York to see a fast-paced world. Everyone says the South can operate a little slower. But that's 100%. Why it needs people like us to move it a little faster to say, okay, it's okay to press the gas. It's okay. Nothing's going to happen.
I mean, back in the day in Australia, when I started out, I remember 2, 3, 4 weeks being like a lifetime. And some of these larger corporate clients were closing within 3 to 5 days. And it was just so much easier to get those deals done. But we're talking about different worlds, different industries, different countries, different markets, because you reference New York versus the South. And then you look at the likes of LA. It's really interesting because every single job opportunity I ended up securing in LA was 1000% word of mouth, relationships only. After my first month of not getting anywhere, trying the traditional routes of applying for jobs, and granted they were obviously geared towards the entertainment industry and that intersection of tech, talent, media, brands, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But I had 100% success building relationships, hearing about an opportunity, basically going in for the kill and securing that role, because so many of these opportunities, whether it was, becoming the global vice president for a new content studio that's backed out of Paris and they're opening their LA office, that isn't advertised.
It's not. You're right.
Launching a new startup for someone as prominent as, say, Jay-Z within the Rock Nation ecosystem, that was not at all advertised. And so it's really interesting when you have to take into consideration how the different markets move and what's acceptable. Because in coming to the South and relocating to Atlanta, just in my personal experiences, I've heard of certain major corporate organizations that may have head offices out of Atlanta taking up to 6 months to recruit with their process. And people are like, I've died. I haven't been able to feed myself or pay rent whilst I'm waiting for your recruitment process. And then also the super special or intricate roles in certain pockets of the entertainment industry. I've heard that certain major music labels have also taken up to like 9 months to close on a senior role in innovation. So it's like, how do candidates keep their motivation in these moments of time? And I guess to your point, they're just going to take something, but then is that the right thing to do, not the right thing to do? Should they be driving Uber in between opportunities to wait for the dream role? Like, maybe shed some sort of advice or thoughts on all of that.
Well, first I have to say you've been so successful because you know how to ask the right questions, Georgie. From what you just shared with me on how you were identifying these positions and what you're doing right now, you know how to ask the right questions, and that
Right.
is applicable anywhere and everywhere. I've been in that same situation where I've received an offer from one place, but I really loved another place that I
Mhm.
really wanted to work on, but I couldn't wait.
Mhm.
And I do feel that practicality outweighs passion sometimes.
Yes.
And organizations that are taking 9 months to hire, by the way, those are not partners of mine. I do not partner
You're
with
like, you're fired.
Yes. There are still businesses in Atlanta that can hire within 1 to 2 weeks. Usually it's a temp to perm situation. They can bring someone on a trial basis and convert them to a permanent employee. But with candidates, at the end of the day, we are on this earth having to pay bills and having to survive
Yes.
on a certain element
Yeah.
before we can thrive. So I tell this to candidates all the time. You have to make sure you can survive in this market and you have to pay your bills. And that looks different for everyone. I've had clients that are entrepreneurs that have said, you know what, Aysha, I drove Uber while my startup was in the works
Yes.
of getting funding because I knew that was my focus. And then I've had other people say, you know what, I took a corporate role because I was tired of freelancing. I needed something steady and secure for my family. So I've seen both ends of it, and I think it just comes down to the personal situation, right? Of how much flexibility do you have in the scope of your role, and to have a direction, right? You know where you want to go. You have to have at least a place you want to land, right? Career wise, and to figure out how you can get there. And the right recruiter, the right staffing agency could at least help have those conversations as a neutral third party, like I say, to say, okay, everything we discuss is confidential. Some of my own hiring managers have come and had these conversations with me, or friends, or however that looks like, because sometimes you just have to look at it in your own perspective, in your own lens, and understand, hey, what's best for me and my family.
I love that advice. That's such great advice, because I think there are so many, executives and entrepreneurs that, have harnessed, successful careers, but are also have so many creative interests, and they spend their lives and careers trying to convert those creative interests, those passions, into profitable endeavors. But to your point, it often comes down to practicality, and that's okay. You've still just got to work out how to balance the passion with practicality, what's going to be most important, and see if you can achieve some type of balance so that you can actually support your creative interests amidst having those more practical, that practical stability in your life. But do you see much of a difference between the way startups recruit and the types of candidates, that the likes of startups, that's if you do recruit for startups, and hopefully you do, so we can have this conversation, and okay if you don't, versus how corporates recruit? Because I feel that startups typically attract more of the risk-taking renegade, the natural entrepreneur, the natural jack of all trades, is capable or happy to sort of wear every hat, versus the candidate that is sort of willing to fit into that corporate slot. What is your take on those differences in how those companies approach opportunity?
Yes. So I agree with what you had just spoken on a moment ago. Startups do look at more hiring around the personality and the overall work ethic of an individual versus ticking off a bunch of skills and requirements. That being said, though, some startups are going into a very specialized technical product,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Where they need to see certain experience on someone's background. They need to know you're capable of doing this role. So I think the hardest part is when someone wants to work with a startup and they're like a fresh graduate out of college and they don't have that applicable experience. That can be really hard unless you're a software engineer, right? And in that case, you're okay. But at the same time, I do feel like startups are looking to kind of build an incubator of talent that comes with different industries or different backgrounds. But at the end of the day, I do see more corporate organizations moving in that direction where they're starting to realize maybe it's taking so long to hire because the best candidate isn't going to check off 100% of the boxes I have. The best candidate is the one that has a great work ethic, that has an open mind, that wants to learn, wants to adapt, wants to work within a specific team. There are so many variables within that that I think what startups have done right is understanding what we call the culture fit, right?
Yes.
Of, okay, we're a small organization. So the CEO and the CFO are pretty much, your managers, so to speak, right? Those are who you report to. And so it's a small team, and accountability is just the way it goes, right? There's no hiding beneath anything. And so I think within that you emerge finding some really great talent. And corporate organizations are starting to understand that in the sense of, oh wow, we want to retain, and we also want to attract candidates of that caliber. What can we do differently? And that is looking at it from a personality or a culture fit.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great insight, feedback, advice for sure. And are you still there? No. Aisha, your screen has frozen. I hope that we haven't lost you altogether. Aisha, I don't know if you can hear me, but you have completely frozen. Oh, and I've lost her. So, I'm gonna. Okay. I'm going to stay here and wait for Aisha to get back on.
Your laptop. I have to just. So sorry.
It's okay. We love technology, don't we? It works for us most of the time. That's okay. I'll just cut all of this section out. Now I've completely blanked on where we were at. I just said that was great advice and feedback and input and all the rest, and what you just shared. I totally.
Startups, candidates,
Yeah.
housewives.
No. That was a great input. So the next question I had for you was, I'm very interested in learning more about your speaking and what subject matters that you're actually speaking on, and how those opportunities have come about for you.
Oh, well, thank you. I've never even been asked this before. I spoke on a couple of different topics with UPS. It was more so around nonprofit board service, right? How does a younger female get onto a board of directors organization?
Right, that's great. Yeah, that's a
How to navigate that. There's a great organization in Atlanta called Onboard. Onboard is all around supporting women getting into board positions. Side note
amazing.
And
Okay.
then,
Yeah. Yeah.
but with Kennesaw State, with Oxford, with CNN, with UPS, it was really just through my own network of
Mm,
people understanding the space that I was in and saying, okay, you seem like you know what you're talking about. I don't want to call
mm,
myself a subject matter expert because every day I'm learning something new too. But
right.
it's always just been invited to come and speak to a classroom or to an audience, because the person within my network thought I may be the right fit. And I've had opportunities to speak where it's not always the space that I'm most familiar with, right?
Mm,
I've been invited by CNN before to talk about Iran and the people of Iran
yes.
protesting
Yes.
and lighting things
Yes.
on fire. And I said, well, I don't have direct affiliation to this country. I could pass for being Iranian, but I'm not. Let me connect you to someone better equipped to have these conversations and to answer those questions. So
Mhm,
I do
mhm.
not accept 100% of the things I'm invited to speak on, because I have to make sure that this is something that I'm familiar and aware of.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's amazing. And so to wrap up today's conversation, because we could obviously keep talking for hours, I can ask you a million more questions.
I love all your
What?
questions, Georgie. You're the best question asker I've met.
That's such a wonderful compliment. Thank you. I'm genuinely passionate about it. When I meet someone and I'm just, expressing curiosity and getting to know them, I just want to literally just ask 1,000 questions. And you've just been amazing to speak to because you're just so direct and knowledgeable in obviously the subject matters at hand. You know that there are other questions I'd like to ask you, but we're going to talk offline regarding those,
Yeah.
and maybe save that for a different time.
Yeah.
I guess I could ask you one more question. It's curiosity around your involvement with the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce and the foundation. How do you see these bodies supporting local communities or integrating into some of the work that you do? I'm curious to learn more about their roles, only because since coming to Atlanta, I have dealt with the city of Atlanta, some of the office, the folks there,
Mhm.
whether it's like the lead technology person or Andre Dickens' right hand, or
Yeah.
the Metro Atlanta Chamber and some of the initiatives there. And it's just interesting to hear and learn more about what role either you're having or they have in elevating different aspects of the community.
Yes, yes. So I will say, uh, up until maybe about a year ago, I had never interacted with any chamber of commerce, and it was a mentor of mine that was said, "I highly recommend, because of your
Wow.
involvement with Spherion, you explore
Yeah.
it." And I'm familiar with the Metro Atlanta Chamber, the DeKalb
Yes.
Chamber, Brookhaven Chamber of Commerce, Johns Creek. There's many different chambers
Many.
of
Hmm.
commerce, whether they're county based or city based. I've
Hmm.
noticed those are the two differences, right? Whether it has a
Hmm.
city focus or a county focus. Shout out to the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. They won Best Chamber in the
Wow.
US. They got these really
Wow. Holy
cool
cow
soup. I should
pants.
have had my big Super Bowl ring for you. It's like a huge World Series looking ring they gifted
That's
the board.
amazing.
And it's
Congratulations.
I
I'm
wasn't
sure
a
you had
part
a
of
bit
it
to
when
do with that.
I wasn't a part of it when they won this
Okay.
accolade, but it attracted me to it because the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce's mission, similar to many other chambers like Metro Atlanta,
Mm,
is to drive their local businesses forward. How can they make an impact on the economic development of their
mm,
communities? And so it's a mix of small business owners. It's a mix of large organizations that have built up their facilities in Gwinnett and said, hey, I want to come here to expand
mhm.
because I see, I see that it's going to be worth it. And so it's a mix of just different types of organizations, businesses, nonprofits, and these individuals range from college graduates looking for an internship opportunity, saying, hey, the chamber can help me find a great internship, or it is senior leaders that want to be a part of a CEO roundtable and say,
Mhm.
hey, I want to be having discussions with other C-suite leaders just to see how I can get better. There's HR series, there's women, and there's a women arm to it for women only events. There is monthly on topics. I just came from a congressional luncheon today where they invite, it's always bipartisan from both sides of the party lines to meet in the middle and have conversations around the county and state legislature. And the Gwinnett Chamber Foundation is super unique because it supports women, minority, and veteran-owned companies get
Oh, wow.
certification so that they have
Mhm.
access to government contracts, they have access to large procurement and supplier
Mhm.
diversity within
Mhm.
these Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies. So it's been really incredible for Spherion and for myself as an individual
Love that.
to be a part of the Gwinnett Chamber in
Mhm.
particular, because I explored everything that was kind of around the metro Atlanta area. And I'm a
Yeah.
bit impartial because I grew up in Gwinnett, but it
Right.
is the most diverse county in the US, which is
Wow.
incredible. Like, you can
That
get the
is.
best kind of food from any cuisine. You'll meet the kindest people, and everybody that I encountered within the chamber, they were genuinely curious to say, hey, how, like, what are you looking to accomplish? How could I help you?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
realized that that
Love
was the
that.
best way for me to build relationships, was to
Mhm.
also ask that question, to say,
Mhm.
how can I support your business? What is it that you're
Mhm.
looking to do? I know I mentioned it when we first met, but I would love to invite you to lunch there. They have
Oh, yes.
their own lunch club, so to speak. And
Oh, yeah, no, I'd love to. An excuse to get out of the house because I am a work from homer, and I personally work really well and effectively at home because I just acknowledge the amount of hours that you've really got to get ready every single day. You can't slack on your
and no
appearance, and you have to,
distractions.
yeah, all that, and
Yeah.
drive to the office, and I just the small talk typically in the office environment can take up time. I mean, it's still a positive thing. It just
Yeah.
depends on the environment. But
Right.
anyway, as a work from homer, yeah, any excuse to also get out of the house for something meaningful is all for it. So yeah, I'm here. Let me know.
That's awesome. Okay, well, I think we need to sync up next week or the week after,
Yes,
what's best for your
yes,
schedule.
yes.
But it's I was honored when you asked me to come onto your podcast. Genuinely flattered that you thought of me, Georgie, to have
Of
this
course.
conversation.
Well, you're in a really interesting field. You're in a really timely field. And I'm very attracted and drawn to like female entrepreneurs that are hustling and working hard and creating and building a mission. And with just all the interconnectivity of what you're doing and up to, it's just like very interesting and valuable and makes for a great conversation. I love learning. So you've imparted a lot of great gems and insights and advice today, which I know listeners will, gain a lot from. And so, on that note, where can they find you? Where is the best way to
Yes.
access you?
On that note, I would encourage anyone that needs some sort of support on an individual career basis or to grow their organization. You can find me on LinkedIn, Aysha Abdullatif. You can go to our Spherion.com/neatlanta, NE Atlanta.com is our Spherion website, and reach out and find my contact info there. Or you can go to Ayeworld.com and find my contact info there. But I would say Spherion/NEAtlanta.com or my LinkedIn, great ways to stay in touch.
That's great. I'll for sure include a couple of those links in the assets that we seed out that
Yeah.
you can repurpose at your own leisure. But thank you very much again for being here and being open to having the conversation with me today. And I really look forward to seeing you soon in person and otherwise.
Me too. Likewise. Thank you, Georgie. Take care.
Unfiltered.
Like you're in another world, like you zoned out. You know what I'm saying?